Good morning, everybody. It is Agent Weather Forecaster here with the latest update here on the tropical Atlantic here on Tropical Depression 3, which can very likely become Tropical Storm Cristobal and even Hurricane Cristobal in the Gulf of Mexico here as it continues to get closer and closer overseas here in the Bay of Campeche. We have made latest updates here on the National Hurricane Center on the winds, vorticity, and all of that. So please be sure to, of course, watch the whole video for the latest update here on Tropical Depression 3. Of course, be sure to subscribe if you're new to the channel to show all your awesome support here. And also, be sure to share the video to any friends or family that you know live in the Gulf Coast, which can very well likely see a possible, our first hurricane landfall of the Atlantic hurricane season of 2020. But with that further ado, let's get this tropical update. We're now going to take a look at the National Hurricane Center here for the 5-day tropical weather outlook. And here you see we have Tropical Depression 3 right here in the Bay of Campeche in the far western and southern part of the Gulf of Mexico here. This is now over the Bay of Campeche and is not too far off the coast for Mexico as the system continues to stall over the ocean, which can continue to bring that possibility to have a tropical storm as early as the next 24 hours here. So here we have Tropical Depression at maximum sustained winds at 35 miles per hour. So it is a very strong tropical depression here, not too far off from getting to these tropical storm force winds, and it has now strengthened to the central pressure of 1,003 millibars. Yesterday was actually at 1,007, and it's moving west at 3 miles per hour. So this thing is very well going to continue to stall as this moves on in the coming days, and it's very warm water, so it's going to continue to bring in that possibility for the early tropical storm here, which will also bring that possibility to maybe even have a decent hurricane category 1 or category 2 as it continues to move up in the Gulf in next week. This thing can very well be in the ocean for a little over less than a week here, so it's going to be in the ocean for a very, very long time here. So let's go ahead and check out everything else. Also, let's go ahead and check out the possibilities in the timing and the cone. So here we are looking at the National Hurricane Center here, cone and timing here for Tropical Depression 3 and to become Tropical Storm Cristobal, the third named storm of the hurricane season here. And here we have tropical storm warnings along the southern Mexico coast here on the Bay of Campeche here. So we have tropical storm warnings across much of the Mexico coast like we had for Central America when this was Amanda. And as you see, this thing's going to be stalling for quite a long time. It's like a huge junction of letters here. This is because the thing is going to stall, and it's going to be doing a weird boomerang-like turn here. It's going to be going like this for it's a very weird track as we see, but this is why we have such a junction. So it goes from basically tomorrow or later tomorrow at 1 p.m. this thing could very well become a tropical storm here. Tropical storm, and by Thursday it's going to be getting closer and closer to the coast of Mexico. So it's very hard to see, but it was right here not too long ago. Now it's going to go like this in the Bay of Campeche. It's going to do like a little turn, but it's not going to make a landfall in Mexico, not that we know of. And it's going to be by Thursday, it's going to be now making that finishing touch of that U-turn, and then by later on Saturday, this thing's going to be heading straight to the middle of the Gulf of Mexico where we have very warm waters here. So as you see, this is the where we have that gray background. That's the next 1 to 3 day track. So this thing really won't be really on its fast track until the next 3 days. So this thing's going to be moving very, very slowly for the next 72 hours, really, which is exactly why we could possibly have this becoming a really big tropical storm in the Bay of Campeche, because it is going to stall for quite a while, and then it's going to be heading to a really faster track. So as you can see, that at 12 hours, this thing's going to be very far, so it's going to be moving at a faster pace. But even by Sunday, we can very well have a very strong tropical storm, and we can have a hurricane likely in this general area to form to a Cat 1, or who knows, maybe it could become a Cat 2 just before landfall for Texas or Louisiana. Texas, Louisiana is the main area of focus. We do have a very large area for potential landfall or track. We can't even rule out the possibility for Florida, but we're going to look at the tracks later on. So let's go ahead and check out the satellite imagery. So here's the satellite imagery here, and you see this thing's very well. It's actually getting off into the middle of the Bay of Campeche here right now. So this is where it is right now. Not looking as organized as it was earlier. So here it is right here stalling in the middle of the Bay of Campeche, moving west at 3 miles per hour. So this thing's going to kind of go like this. I know it's really hard with these colors here. Let's see if I can actually choose a nice, good color here. Not exactly sure what will actually work with this, but as you see, these things are going to kind of move like this. It's going to move to the west with that little turn, so it's going to go like this to the west, and then it's going to take that little weird U-turn, boomerang, light turn, getting very close to the coast of Mexico, and then going straight up into the middle of the Gulf of Mexico, where that thing will very well strengthen extremely fast and quickly with the very favorable conditions. So this is the satellite imagery. Let's go ahead and check out the visible satellite imagery here, and this is what we're seeing right now. As you see, it's continuing to move off into the middle of the Bay of Campeche right here. It is moving very slowly, as you see, but we are seeing also these nice vorticity signatures here as well, because it is, of course, a tropical depression, not an invest now, and this could very well be a tropical storm as early as tomorrow morning. So who knows if we have Cristobal by tomorrow morning. Now let's go check out all the tracks and the intensity guidance. So now if we look at the model tracks here for Tropical Depression 3, soon to be Cristobal, this thing, as you see, it is going to be doing that weird, you can see a junction of all the spaghetti models here. It's going to be a little area of just pure spaghetti models, all these colors here. That's because, of course, it is going to be seeing that weird turn, and then it's going to be going up into the Gulf. So as you see these numbers, when you look at the numbers here, when the spaghetti models go to the north, they're really long from now, 96 hours. 120 hours, 120 hours, 96 hours. So by the next really 96 hours of that range, when it actually starts to go directly to the north and heads towards the Gulf Coast. So as you see, we have a very widespread area, cone. I mean, look at this cone. This is how widespread. We don't exactly know what state's going to get landfall. It could be Texas. It could be Louisiana. It could be Mississippi. It could even be Florida. Florida is still not out of the picture. So really, this is our cone. This is really a very large area of potential track and potential landfall. So really, Florida, Mississippi, Louisiana, and Texas, you guys all have that possibility of landfall. At this point, usually at this time, we actually have at least 1 or 2 states that have possibility, not 3 or 4 states. Like you can very well have this whole Gulf Coast on an area of really on the possibility for landfall. We don't have a huge really nice track which is guaranteed to go there. We don't have a specific track where all the models are actually green, but most of the models are actually showing it affecting Louisiana based on most of the models, as this is where really all the models are kind of directing it straight to the north to Louisiana. So really, I think Louisiana might have the biggest possibility for landfall, with Texas after, then Mississippi and Florida. So really, Texas, Corpus Christi, Houston, New Orleans, areas into much of the Louisiana coast, areas into Gulfport, even Panama City and Pensacola. You guys need to be on the lookout for this potential landfall, because this thing has really, we have no idea where this thing's actually going to go. We have we have a general vicinity of, like, it's going to the north for sure, but we don't know exactly if it's going to go to Texas or even Florida. So very big area, but it's a big question. Where is it going to go? And we're going to that's why I'm going to keep on tracking the new model track guidance as we get a better picture of where this thing can go. And let's go ahead and check out the intensity guidance. So now we look into the intensity guidance here. I think, as you see, based on yesterday's package or yesterday's advisory, this could very well be a lot stronger than we anticipated yesterday. Many of you guys say it's not going to be possible for a hurricane to develop. There's a lot of wind shear and all of that. Well, actually, shear dies down, and we have very warm SSTs, very little dry air. This thing's very favorable. It's going to be in the ocean for about a week straight. A week of ocean. And with Michael, when it was at Category 5 made landfall near Pensacola or Panama City Panama City, it was in the ocean for like 3 days, really 4 days at most. This is going to be a week, and you guys don't think it's going to be a hurricane. Well, it very well could become a Category 1 or Category 2. I don't see this becoming a major hurricane, which is Category 3 or above, but I do see this becoming a Category 1, at least a Category 1. As you see, many models don't show this becoming a tropical storm, and so really the range is the next 36 hours to possibly the next 84 hours. And basically, the next 84 hours is basically what we saw in the tracks and the cone. This thing won't really start heading north until the next 72 hours. So we have a huge range of possibilities. We can see this becoming a storm, a named storm, as early as the next 24 hours. But really, most likely, next 60 hours, maybe 48 hours, even 36 hours is when most models should become a tropical storm. And this is actually very important because the latest of becoming a tropical storm is 108 hours. And that's not too far off from making landfall. That can make a huge difference from a Category 2 to a tropical storm landfall. So as you see, many models are actually anticipating getting to a hurricane or Category 1 force wind, especially the ones that are showing it becoming a tropical storm as early as the next 36 hours. Those are showing it becoming a hurricane by the next 96 hours there. So we are seeing, and it's not going to be a weak Category 1. It's actually going to be a decent and a moderate Category 1, possibly 70 knots there, which is quite a strong system. And then those models that should be becoming a tropical storm by the next 48 to 60 hours, those should be getting close to a hurricane force wind right before a landfall, or not right before landfall, a couple, little over a day or two before a landfall. Now let's go ahead and check out the tropical tidbits. Now let's go ahead and check out the new GFS model run. And for those who saw my advisory yesterday, or they have the new update yesterday morning, the GFS showed nothing really, only for the Bay of Campeche, and it showed it making a landfall. But we have a major update on the GFS now. In the next 6 hours, it could be at 999 millibars in the next 6 hours, getting closer and closer to a possibility of getting those tropical storm-like millibars. And as we get in the next 12 hours, 996 millibars. Of course, these are very warm SSTs in the Bay of Campeche. Extremely warm temperatures of SSTs, sea surface temperatures. Very favorable conditions. We have very little shear in the Bay of Campeche. So this is going to very well have very favorable conditions in the next 24 hours. Based on the GFS, this thing could possibly make landfall in Mexico in the next 24 hours at 985 millibars. That could be based on this has become a tropical storm, maybe even a tropical storm here in the next 24 hours there. And then it doesn't just show it shows it making a landfall. Of course, that's when it falls apart to 1,000 millibars, which is why some models show it not becoming a tropical storm until the next 72 hours because of the GFS model. But as we now get into the next 96 hours, this thing does become a big system once again, like we saw on the cones and all the tracks. It's going to be taking that turn like this and then going like that. But the GFS is the only main tropic model, or the main model that is good for the tropics, that shows a Mexico landfall. All the other models show it going and staying in the Bay of Campeche and then like that, which obviously this can be a huge update. This can be a huge difference. If the GFS is correct and makes landfall in Mexico, this thing can very well take a lot longer to strengthen, because it's going to have to strengthen. It's going to have to really restart and build up once again. But if CMC and Icon are right, this thing could actually maybe become a Category 2, because it's not going to be hitting any land until the U.S. landfall. And as we now get into the next 108 hours, this is June 6th, it's going to become a 995 millibars, becoming close to a Category 1 force wind, and then can drop to 994 millibars, bringing flooding rains for parts of the Gulf Coast, Louisiana, parts of Florida, Mississippi, Alabama. You guys can be seeing extremely heavy rain and flooding, and then it makes landfall in Louisiana. That is a GFS. Now let's go ahead and check out the CMC model here, what the CMC is showing. So now we check out the CMC. So the CMC is showing it being at 1,000 millibars in the next 90 hours here. It is gonna take a while to actually strengthen. So the GFS is showing it strengthening very quickly in the Bay of Campeche. CMC only shows it not getting that strong. Really shows it being at 999 millibars before possibly affecting that parts of Mexico, and then it does strengthen it quite quickly, going to 995 millibars, and then making landfall in Louisiana. That's two models that show a Louisiana landfall, but that's not it. Also, we're going to be seeing extreme flooding for areas not only for Louisiana, all the way to Florida. We're going to have we can see flash flooding. So just because Florida, Alabama, Mississippi may not have the biggest possibility for landfall based on now, and if it doesn't make landfall in those areas, we're still going to be seeing catastrophic flooding in these areas. A ton of rain. 6 to possibly 12 inches of rain is expected for parts of the Gulf Coast. Now let's go and check out the icon, which is absolutely crazy compared to all the rest of the models. So let's go check out the icon here. So basically, next 24 hours, based on the icon, this thing can be at 1,002 millibars here. So not going to be strengthening as quick as the GFS does, but it actually does show it strengthening a lot now in the next 48 hours, getting it to 993 millibars. And not making landfall in the Mexico area, which means it's going to strengthen and not weaken. By the next 90 hours, this thing could be at 981 millibars, getting close to that borderline of Category 1 force winds. And as we now get into the 108 hours, June 6th, this thing can be at 971 millibars. Very well could be a Category 1 and maybe a very weak Category 2. And then, of course, the icon model does not show it making landfall in Louisiana. It shows it going directly to Louisiana and then taking a turn right before, which means, obviously, the only state left is Texas. It looks like it's going to go straight for a landfall for Louisiana, and then it completely takes a turn there and can make landfall in Texas at 974 millibars and June 8th. So June 8th is the day of landfall for Texas, and really June 7th is kind of the landfall for Louisiana. But obviously, we have Florida and Mississippi still not potential focus because based on the model tracks. But these main models do not show it affecting those areas. So we just have to keep this in mind. And let's go and check out the really close radar there. So let's go take a closer look. Here it is at 108 hours here at 971 millibars. Going to bring extreme catastrophic rain and flooding. And could potentially make a landfall just south of the Houston metro area, near Texas City there. This thing could very well potentially make landfall at 974 millibars, and this is going to bring catastrophic flooding for parts of Dallas as well, and mainland areas in the plains. Now let's go and check out the winds and exactly see if this could potentially actually have Category 1 force winds or above. So we're going to be checking out the GFS new model run here. Here it is at 999 millibars here with these the new winds here in the next 6 hours. As we now get into the next 24 hours, this thing is going to be at 985 millibars, and could possibly bring in up to 50 knots here before that Mexico area. As we now get into these general areas, this is going to, of course, bring in that that landfall for the Mexico and kind of fall apart. And then here it is strengthening once again in the next 108 hours. It is bringing in 46 knots, likely really for part of the central Gulf there. And then, of course, the Louisiana landfall. Now let's go and check out the other models like the CMC and Icon. Alright, if we check now the CMC here, it is going to bring in, possibly going to bring in not really strong winds throughout parts of the Bay of Campeche. Yeah, it's not bringing the really strong winds like it is in the GFS model. But it's going to be a lot stronger as it does move closer to the Gulf, possibly bringing in close to 50 knots there. And, of course, making that landfall for central Louisiana. But the biggest model here, the biggest and the most the model that pops out is the Icon. This is a new model, and this one's showing possibly having a Category 2 or Category 1 landfall for parts of Texas. Now, this is the most intriguing model, and let's go ahead and check this out, because this could very well, we can't rule out the possibility of this actually happening. So like we saw on the radars, it is showing 1,002 millibars, the Icon model, in the next 24 hours. But as we now go ahead in the next 48 hours, this thing could very well be in the next 900 and could be very well be at 994 millibars. So this could be one of the models that actually shows becoming a tropical storm not too long from now. So it is strengthening as it does move up the coast of the Bay of Campeche there, and it could be at 975 millibars by the next 102 hours. The next 108 hours, this thing is going to be very strong at 971 millibars. So this thing can very well become a Category 1 hurricane in the middle of the Gulf here. So let's go ahead and check out the zoomed radar here, so you can, or zoomed region here of the Gulf Coast, so you guys can actually see exactly how strong these winds can be and exactly what areas can be seeing the strongest winds. So here is the zoomed in. Here we have it at 971 millibars. We can possibly see up to 60 knots here, which I believe is 69 miles per hour, and we are not too far from that Category 1 force winds. As we continue to move on, it does, of course, bring quite the strong wind gusts for parts of the coast of Louisiana, possibly bringing up to 35 knots, which is going to bring quite the issue with the saturated soil and all of that. So really, really heavy rain and strong winds for areas that won't be possibly getting landfall, but won't be too far off. As we now get in the next 135 hours by June 7th, this thing could possibly, of course, still at 60 knots. And then could possibly strengthen right before and getting up to possibly the Category 1 force winds. Look, this is going to bring extremely strong winds for parts of the Texas and Louisiana coast. So I think Louisiana and Texas will get hit the hardest. Even if Louisiana is not getting landfall based on the icon model, you guys are definitely still going to be seeing quite the strong winds, especially for that areas of the western area of Louisiana. Can possibly see up to 50 knots there, so definitely crazy. Now let's go ahead and check out to see exactly how favorable these conditions are in the Gulf for the possibility of having this hurricane. So we look at the SSTs here. We are seeing very warm temperatures in the Bay of Campeche as of right now. This system is right here, right now, and it's going to be avoiding these cooler waters. It's basically going like this, and then possibly like that. Obviously, this thing is going to be in the Bay of Campeche for the next really 3 days. So basically, this has 3 days to warm up a ton. And even though it's maybe a little area of below average, it's going to be less than a degree below average, less than half a degree below average. And these temperatures are very warm already, possibly seeing some 80s and high 70s, and even all the way to the northern Gulf. So really, even if we don't have this changing much, this thing's still going to be very favorable. And if it does go like this instead, this is going to have warm water for the rest of this track here. So, like I said, warm SST is very favorable. Temperature anomalies here, and we'll see what if it changes a lot. Who knows if these warmer waters continue that trend to the west. But now let's check out possibly the shear, and also see the shear actually will die down before the system actually moves in the general vicinity of the Gulf. So here's the wind shear here in the next 6 hours. Like I said, we are going to be seeing quite the strong amount of shear for part of the northern Gulf and Caribbean. But look where the Bay of Campeche is. This is where the system is right now, the far southern part of the Bay of Campeche, and we have very little shear. It's like this wind shear flow is kind of sparing the Bay of Campeche because this is right here. It's literally right here, not too far off on that strong flow. So it's just barely getting that. It's basically just barely missing that big wind shear flow. So like I said, we aren't seeing the most favorable conditions as of right now in the Gulf. So if this system were to actually go north immediately, this thing will fall apart. But of course, the shear is still not super duper impressive. Only seeing around 40 knots, maybe 50 knots, which is still pretty strong. But right here, we are seeing around to 30 knots. So still really strong shear for parts of the Gulf. As the system does move inland in Mexico, look at the shear. It completely kind of falls apart right here. Falls apart. The northern Gulf is now only seeing up to possibly 10 or 20 knots here, maybe even 30 knots at most. And the Bay of Campeche, some areas aren't even seeing shear, which is very favorable as the system continues to move north here. Look at this. This low pressure is right here, and we have literally no shear in this general area. So this thing's just missing this wind shear. This wind shear is going to completely fall apart. And as the system does move advance into the Gulf, we literally have the shear avoiding it. It's going like this now, and we have very little shear in this general vicinity. 20 to 30 knots really maximum. The most we'll see is 35 knots, and that's not going to be where that low pressure system is. And then after the system kind of falls apart, or as the system makes landfall, we have literally like no shear whatsoever in the Gulf. That's actually going to make it very vulnerable to actually see some system to develop in the Gulf in the next coming days, but not too favorable condition the next coming days for the Caribbean and part of the northeastern coast or southeastern coast. The last thing we're going to be looking at is the rainfall totals here for this Tropical Depression 3 and soon to possibly even be Hurricane Cristobal. As you see, like I said, we're going to be seeing up to 2 feet of rain for part of the Bay of Campeche, and we're going to be seeing a ton of rain for much of the Gulf. Look at this. All of this is from Cristobal, or soon to be Cristobal. All of this. Absolutely crazy how this system is going to bring in rain all the way to Georgia when it's in the middle of the Gulf of Mexico. Very widespread rain. Like I said, if you're not getting landfall and you still live in Florida, Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, or Texas, if those states don't get landfall, obviously Georgia won't. But we're still going to be seeing the impacts, really heavy rain downpours, and with the winds, we'll see some stronger winds than usual at this time. Because of this, we're going to be seeing many issues, power outages, and much more. If we look at the zoomed in one, as you see, we're going to be seeing a ton of rain for parts of the Big Bend area of Florida. We can be seeing up to possibly all the way to 10 inches of rain. 10 inches of rain. And this is where the cone is. This is literally where the cone is. And this area is going to be seeing 10 inches of rain. As you see, we have a ton of rain for the Gulf. Could be seeing up to 2 feet for parts of the central Gulf of Mexico. And parts of just off the coast of Louisiana can be seeing 2 feet of rain as well. Parts of the southern Louisiana coast will possibly see up to 6 to 8 inches of rain. And parts of Texas can be seeing up to possibly 12 inches of rain. Up to a foot of rain is likely. I hope you guys did enjoy the video, though. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and bye, guys.